It's an honor to be here. It's late in the day, and this is a pretty interesting topic we're going to talk about. It's been mentioned a few times, how important strong customer authentication is, and some of the innovation happening in this space. So I'd like to, without further ado, invite the panel members to come on up. Hopefully we still have everybody here. And I'd like to just start with a quick introduction with everybody. Take a few minutes to just explain a little bit about yourself, who you are, who you work with, and what a little bit about your passion in this industry, but don't get too crazy into it, because I'm gonna ask individual questions in a little bit. But just so the audience gets to know you, in case you didn't pass out business cards earlier.
Thank you, Michal. That's clear? Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, now it's much better. All right, so thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Michał Wawrzyński. I work for the oldest startup in the world. IBM has been around for more than 100 years, so we have quite a history. And I do really feel like working for the startup guys. I really do. And innovation is probably the key thing, that keeps me in the company. And my relationship has not been that easy. I've been with IBM for more than 10 years now, with a break. So I was there and I left, and then now I'm back. And what I'm doing now, I'm responsible for the security solutions for banking industry mainly, related to digital identity trust. So it's an all-cloud solution, very well aligned with the topic that we are discussing today. I'm supporting customers that are trying to be compliant with strong customer authentication, but also trying to get beyond compliance only. Okay, so I'll be happy to discuss this with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Koray Erkan. I represent COVID Systems. COVID Systems is one of the leading authentication providers in the region, and we are serving many banking customers at this moment. My background is, and as an engineer, I was involved in cryptographic systems and IP encryptors and so on, while I was working for the National Research Institute back in Turkey. And then I have switched to the digital side. I have worked with another company, Thales, providing digital solutions to banks, and joining these two backgrounds into one system. So now we're trying to provide the best security with the best user experience for our customers. And thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Zoltan, Szalai, and I'm responsible for digital banking security with some former banking background. So I used to be a banker, so I have some experience how the banks work, how the banks think on digitization and digitalization processes and projects. And I'm using this experience on the field of digital banking, how to make it secure, but at the same time very convenient for the end users.
Thank you. A little bit about my background. I'm originally Romanian, and I left the country when I was 5, back in communism. And I returned to Romania last year. Since being here, I decided to stay because I see a lot of opportunity from all the problems that are obviously here. And with the engineering mindset, I just decided to find solutions. So I have 6 startups, one of them being Pay by Face, which has been talked about a few times here today about biometrics. So I think the idea of securing our data and knowing how it's used and what are the chances that someone's going to steal my money is on everyone's mind. Like just the other day I was having a drink at Radisson, and somebody wasn't, they probably drank too much and they dropped a bunch of $100 bills on the ground, and they left money on the ground when they left, So, I mean, this was back in the days when we all carried cash, before cards and digital currency and all this. Even back then when we didn't have the technology, you could drop money on the ground and lose it, or someone could steal it from your purse or your wallet or whatever. So it's not like technology has created theft. It's just a different form of currency. And this isn't going away. Even the more roadblocks and the more security and the more SMS goes back and forth and passwords and all this stuff, thumbprints and face, someone's always going to try to steal your money that has bad intentions. And so the whole idea of strong customer authentication, it has three components. The idea of knowledge, your PIN, your password, some sort of hidden secret that's only in your head. Something that you physically possess in your like your phone, or something that you can receive communication on, and something that belongs only to you, which makes you, a human being in the physical flesh, like, my face, my thumbprint, I don't know, my veins, my vein patterns, the way I type. There's all these things that make us unique, as human beings, even though all the Chinese look the same, or whatever to us, and then they say all of us look the same. But to computers, we actually do have some very unique characteristics, even twin brothers. So I have a twin brother who, unfortunately died when we were young, but like, there's the whole notion that even humans can be identical. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference. Even parents can't tell the difference between their identical siblings. And so I think computers are getting even better at recognizing this, because an AI engine, to me, like, all the Chinese look the same, but to an AI face recognition algorithm, they don't. So it's starting to actually, it's showing us that computers can bring an edge to this idea. We just have to, have the human interaction. We were talking about this yesterday, about how we're getting, combined into human and machines, how we're starting to interact more and more. So I'd like to go on these ideas, and I'll start with you, the oldest company in the world. From a risk perspective, for the banks, the risks of today's modern digitization, all the technology being used, what new risks are currently present in the technology space? From a business perspective, or maybe from a global consumer perspective?
Yeah, I think it's very common now, that banks understand security, or starting to shift, the paradigm of security from defending their premises or their perimeter, right? And they are trying to focus on what is really the weakest link in the ecosystem. And as you said, right, the weakest link in this ecosystem is human, right? Are individuals. It's me, you, and everyone, in the room. As you said, someone dropped, a pile of notes, and it was the easiest way for a criminal to steal that money, right? And it's true today, right? So the criminals, because I don't want, and I will be, evangelizing against using the word hackers for criminals. I don't believe, that hackers, were trying to get access into banks' internal systems are the major threat anymore. Well, maybe sometimes they are, but
Ride up on a horse and wave your gun in the air with a mask on, and that's how you take money, right?
Yeah, but much easier for criminals is to steal money from individuals, right? We are losing our credentials every single day, right? You can go to the darknet and buy, a bunch of username and passwords for every single digital, service for a few dollars, and there's a high chance that the username and password will match your banking account, right? So this is the major threat that the banks are facing today, and I believe that recognizing this and then trying to implement some security measures at the edge of the banking operations in the digital world are crucial today. That's my perspective.
Yeah, the username password isn't good enough anymore.
No, absolutely.
I don't think it ever was. Since we all pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 anyway.
Neither are SMSs, okay? I can debate on that, but
Yeah.
I don't trust in SMS channel either.
Yeah.
Sorry, may I add something else?
Yes.
And fully agree with Michal, but what I would also add is that on top of the customers, we also must pay attention that the banks has to identify their segment groups and identify the right solution to that certain segment group, because we have heard thousands of times, even today, that there is no silver bullet, or at least everyone has a silver bullet, but there is no unique silver bullet. So it means that if a bank decides to go for a certain solution that will work for a certain group of customers, but no bank has only one single group of customers. So we need to make sure that we identify the right approach to attack. And in terms of the protection, in terms of the security level, we need to identify which level of protection we provide for certain security features. Some of them may require additional ones, some of them may not. If a customer logs into the internet bank, you don't necessarily need to ask hundreds of questions. But of course, if he makes a transaction, a money transaction, then you need to pay attention. So I'm pretty sure that the bank has to understand what are they targeting, what customer group they are targeting, and how to protect these customers.
Right.
And also on top of that, so yes, I agree that the consumption point, the end user is the primary risk, but this risk comes in two forms. One is the person himself or herself, and the second is that the device that particular person is using, and that in that particular moment. Because yes, the bank has all the security back in their headquarters, all the firewalls and everything working to protect the bank from outside attacks. Yet when we talk about the digital solutions, these products of the banks need to be consumed at the end user's devices, and the banks do not have any control on these devices. So what we need to do is make sure not only protecting the passwords, or maybe we will talk about the passwordless security, which is one of the hot topics these days, but also ensuring that the product the bank is providing to their customers through an app, for example, if you're talking about a mobile application, this app needs to be also protected. Beforehand, we allow the customer to log in and then consume the solution.
Yeah, from an engineering perspective, I've built a lot of apps on Android and iOS, and sometimes you're constrained by the device itself because you can't hold all the keys. Like, you're not going to walk into the bank and they're going to give you, a Raiffeisen telephone to carry around with you that's yellow. So they have to build for Apple and for other platforms, otherwise they wouldn't be able to scale with the same control that they would like to have. So sometimes you just have to come up with clever ways and innovative ways to keep the customer experience at a high level. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're taking some risks. You have to take the risks. And so what are some measures that are currently in the market, in the technology field, realistically right now, like face recognition, I'm trying to do face pay stuff, but like the 3DS Secure, adding more to the system can add friction to the customer experience, because now I have to get an SMS every time I buy something online. That's really annoying, but I know it's protecting me. So can we make things easier for the customers, simpler, since that's what we all want? Like, I don't want to, what if my phone is on edge and I got the text in like 5 minutes and I didn't get the text? I'll send it again, It can get pretty annoying, and not, maybe not for everybody, but like my grandma, she's going to call me up and say, I don't know what's going on, I need to buy something, can you come over and help me? So how do we, the segmentation part, it's like everybody has a different level of experience while using these systems. So currently, what are some of the things that, because maybe some people in the audience don't know everything, like what are some of the mechanisms that are currently in place to help this process?
Of course. So first of all, I believe that there's no single piece of technology that can protect you from any threats. And that's why, you know, our IBM's approach is to really try to understand the full context about the user, you know, the connection itself, the device, you know, and behavior of the user, and many, many more things. So all we do actually is, you know, we try to gather as many information as possible about this context of usage, mobile banking or web applications, and then try to come up with some smart assessment on this risk. Okay, and for that reason, we are gathering, you know, pieces of information called risk indicators, and they may be multiple, right? So, to give you an example, in the mobile banking environment, we've recognized that there are, you know, criminal groups around the world who do the mobile farms, you know, set up the mobile farms and try to, you know, mass access user accounts and steal money from those accounts. So we recognize that a very good pattern to recognize that there's something wrong going on is that, you know, a device, a mobile device, lying face down on the table and connected to the power source, you know, and battery 100% charged, right? If you think about it, it makes sense, right? When you use your mobile banking application, you will probably not, you know, face it down on the table, and you know, 99% of the cases you will not have the device charged to 100%, right? So those are the pieces of information that we try to collect, come up with some, you know, smart risk assessment, and this way, you know, provide banks the risk score that is associated to this particular session. And obviously, those parameters depend on the device, as you mentioned, and depends on the use case that we are trying to protect against. Okay? That's the idea.
And I would go even further a bit, that if we collect multiple information about the users, so digital footprints, like how this customer is using the internet, how they are Facebooking, Googling, mailing, using bank applications, we can create a very complex graph of that customer. And it's very important that this can be used for any type of fraud prevention, because whenever there is a transaction, we may use a very simple authentication, a very simple transaction signature, and then we combine it together with a comparison of the transaction environment, how this transaction was built up by the customer, and verify if this fits on this digital identity of this customer, on this complex graph. So whenever I'm talking about this graph itself, this is not a mathematical thing. First of all, it is, but the main idea of it is to have a personal digital identity. And this is very important to understand that when we are talking about digitalization or digitization, we are not talking about scanning the ID. Okay, it was in the 20th century. Okay, when you made a copy of the bank, in the bank of your ID or your passport, and then someone put it on a CD or on a hard drive. That's nothing anymore. What we are talking about is to collect as many information about the customer as possible, and then create a profile about that customer and use this profile for any further actions. And this is very important for the banks to be able to own this kind of information. Earlier today, one of the big four mentioned that who is having the customer has the biggest value. I would rather go a little bit further. Who owns customer data has the biggest value.
Sounds like Facebook Libra coin.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you mustn't be frightened, because these little pieces of information are not harmful. It's like someone is dragging the leg. Okay, it's nothing harmful. But if someone comes to a bank wearing a scarf, might mean different things. First of all, that this guy is cold, maybe, or he is a robber. So, I mean, and this is a warning sign, so it's not necessarily means bad thing, but the bank may decide based on different factors whether these are reaching a certain risk level or not.
Yeah, and that also goes, you know, like the story about the or whatever account that I put my money in, and then they blocked it for 6 months. So without any warning, without anybody oversight or anything like that. So that I would kind of contradict that idea. I know I'm building pay by face, so I'm not going to say too much, but the idea is like, okay, I'm putting all my trust into this system that knows my digital identity and my data worth, and maybe one day we'll pay for eggs with our data, our data currency instead of real currency. Because I have 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. Maybe I get free eggs every week. I don't know, right? So but then somebody can shut you off in a blink of an eye, or maybe the sun blows up and sends a solar flare, and we all go in the Stone Ages, and we can't, none of us have that $100 bill anymore because we wanted Libra coin. So
I would like to add something. So yes, there should be systems if we are willing to remove the friction and then show things kind of seamless to the end user, help them to consume our products in a seamless way. Yes, some clever systems, intelligent systems should be there that should be monitoring the behavior of the user and then acting accordingly to prevent any fraud without the user even noticing them. And on top of that, there's another approach, and maybe these two approaches should work on top of each other. One is, yes, the fraud detection systems should be working in the background, and there are also fraud prevention systems, like I have mentioned that we should be protecting the app of the end user using it on its device. And so our approach to the problem is to make sure that the app is the genuine app of the bank, and without any modification, without any tampering being made on that app, to ensure that the app, the solution, the product is being consumed as intended from the very beginning, which potentially prevents any potential fraud happening on the system at the very first place.
And no reverse engineering.
No reverse engineering.
No reverse
and then,
engineering.
of course, another thing about this friction, about the biometrics, how they play a role in this equation. So yes, recently more and more papers and more applications even are mentioning about passwordless authentication. So biometrics will be the next big thing. So we will be most probably in 1 or 2 years we'll be ceasing completely use of passwords, because passwords are considered not secure anymore, like the SMSs. So SMS used to be the mostly used second factor for our authentication to ensure that we are in the possession of the device registered with the bank, but it is also considered to be not secure anymore. So instead we should be moving away from these kind of legacy authentication solutions into the behavioral solutions, where biometrics plus behavioral analytics play the role in the background.
Yeah, currently, like one-time use tokens are kind of the next level instead of a static password. So you get a one-time use token on demand that expires. Like when I log into AWS now, I have to open an app and get a token in a few seconds, and then I have to use it there. So I think that makes me feel comfortable. I built like trading desk systems back in the early 2000s, and Reuters would give us these little satellite tokens so that our traders could only log in with those tokens, and that seemed like Star Trek. That seemed like so great. Like, we're connected to satellites, this is amazing, and it felt good for our trade desk guys to log in with a satellite connection. They felt like they were secure, right? But now it's like, oh, now I can do that, with my bank. So that technology, I think, is advancing so rapidly, where from a consumer perspective and a user perspective, using these systems, there's no like end game. It's not like, oh, we built this token and this is going to solve everything. So what other, if you could, go into the future, I've heard of the vein scanning, that some people are testing vein scans because all our veins are all exactly, like no one has the same vein patterns and things like that. Have you heard in the marketplace some other forms of strong customer authentication?
So we can question, or we can test various biometric properties of the users, including the veins, including fingerprints, retina scans, face scans. Lots of options are available to us. The question we might be asking is, how we should be bringing those questions to the market, to the end user, because yes, PIN scan is one of the most secure options we could have. Maybe we could apply these on the ATM machines, most probably, but talking about the digital channels and talking about mobile first and you know, everything. So providing a second hardware to scan just the vein of the user is impossible these days. So there are, yes, applications where we can provide additional hardware to verify the user with their biometrics, but as you noted, the most common options are still the fingerprints and then the face scans, which are broadly available on the mobile devices we are using these days.
And what I would add as an additional element or additional solution that might come is that everyone has a mobile phone now, but I tell you that in 20 years none of you will have, or at least most of you definitely will not have. In the next 10 years, the mobile phone will be very common to everyone, but there will be something else. It might be glasses, it might be earrings, it might be something under your skin, but there will be something which is more related to you, where the traditional biometric things will not be possible or not be the same as today. So the next way of authenticator might be some chips under your skin or might be your own behavior. Today the technology is already here that even your typing can be your strong customer authenticator. How you press the buttons. Everyone is pressing the buttons differently. Okay, trust me, if you write a letter, a word of 10 letters, there is a system which is able, very precisely is able to differentiate each of you in this whole. So it means that the behavior, how you had your head, can be used, for instance, sunglasses authentication. So definitely the biometric, the face by app or pay by face kind of solution is definitely getting to a way where you are able to scan someone's face or can use the movement of the face or the movement of the eyes to use as an authenticator, and this will be the real biometric. For the time being, we are tied with technology. We can collect fingerprints or we can collect pictures, but definitely in the next 10 years it will go beyond.
So if I may, Zoltan, I'd be happy to present the demo for you of the solution that we already implement to many banking customers around the world, and it's related to behavioral biometrics. Okay, so when we talk about biometrics, you should distinguish between two parts, basically. One is physical biometrics, like fingerprint, eye retina, veins and other stuff. And then there's the behavioral biometrics, which is everything that you behave, right? Which is keystroke anomaly detection, which is mouse movements on the computer, which is the mobile device acceleration, position in space, which is the way you swipe and touch the screen, including pressure and time of the swipes. This is all already implemented. Okay, so this is all in the solutions that we are providing today. And actually, I believe this is the technology of today. If you ask, the largest banks in the region, they are all piloting this kind of technology. Reason for that is, they thought that SMS will solve their strong customer authentication issue. Well, guess what? It didn't. Okay. Well, it did for compliance reasons. Okay. So the regulator can no longer, come and say, you are not compliant with PSD2. But those solutions became, so hard to use, right? So that customers started to resist using the technology provided by banks, okay? And the second thing is that they've actually started to see increased costs, for example, of SMSs, right? Imagine if you need to send an SMS for everyone, for every single login, that starts to cost money, right? So now I know many banks are evaluating behavioral biometrics in order to get rid of SMS second factor. So that's the technology for today. What the future will bring, well, that's ahead of us.
Yeah, and the whole idea, like, every time I think it always ends up customer experience, customer experience. I mean, that's why we all have phones without buttons in our pockets, because nobody ever thought that would happen. But, you know, just give you a quick story about Pay by Face. The reason I came up with it is so in America, there was this thing at the telco companies where top-level executives go to all these buildings and they carry a stack of like ID cards trying to get through all the different security levels and stuff. And the same thing, they're always, you know, eating at cafeterias and trying to eat somewhere on the go, and it was really complicated for them. So we were like, you know, we tried to figure out, well, there's got to be the whole seamless payment thing, you know, where my car buys gas for me before I get to the gas station. It knows how much gas it needs. It knows how much I buy every time, because I always buy the same exact amount of gas every time. I'm not one of those fill-up guys. And so, you know, it should all know that. You know, it should pay for my gas. It should buy the gas, and then, you know, if it needs windshield wipers, it should tell me on my phone, you should replace your windshield wipers. Like, making our life easier as a consumer with all this technology and all these different advances, you know, trying to pick the right one at the right time for a business perspective, a cost operational perspective, so we don't, you know, risk our clients' money and we don't risk our investors' money, and we choose the right technology at the right time, and it lasts long enough to bring us ROI back, and, you know, it helps our brand and it improves our blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not easy. It can't be easy to make these decisions at the right time, at the right place, at the right time, picking the right thing. You just kind of sometimes have to just hope, you know, that it's the right thing to do. And look at Alipay, you know, now I don't know what they got, 10 million users. So, I mean, maybe Pay by Face is the right time for Europe. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe we'll turn into Hong Kong protests, you know, if people start tracking our faces. So how do you gauge when it's too strong? You know, when it's too strong customization, you know, authentication. When do you say, okay, I think we should stop there and then wait, see how the people react to it, and then move to the next level? You know, so we're not putting things in my hand. Like, I got to go to the hospital now to get a chip inserted in my arm to start paying for my milk. Like, that sounds ridiculous right now to me. So I'd rather get an SMS, you know? So when is enough is enough, you know? How do you gauge that from your own experience, going through projects and innovation and all this stuff?
Like I said, it's very important to understand that it depends on the customer group, and honestly, I tell you, even in this room there are people who would love chips, okay? Trust me. Okay, thank you, Michal. And there is another guy, thanks. So definitely this will encourage the technology to go into this direction, but not necessarily. Just imagine the phones. People are having small phones, we're having small phones, now we have large phones, and even larger, even bigger, because people love them. Not all of them, but most of them love that. So it is the same with this kind of level of security that people wants to protect their money. And for that, sometimes they do something which previously they didn't believe. But I fully agree with you that this will not happen with a big bank. So, and there will be people who will prefer the SMS or even a static password. And honestly speaking, I don't find static password a bad thing. For many things, for many levels of information, it's enough. Just imagine, if you go to your home, you still use a key, like 50 years ago. So it means that there is a certain level of security which proves the rules and is able to provide the right level on that SMS, OTP, SMS OTP, static password or zero password can protect some sort of information. Okay, even in Google Drive, there are some links which are not protected by password. If you know the link, you can go to that page, because you not necessarily need to protect that information. So I would say that it's not a question what level of security we introduce to the customers, but what additional protection we are able to provide. And this is risk prevention or fraud prevention, which can be attended. And this is helping the banks to segment it.
Yeah, and that goes to the topic of like, you know, remote transactions online are the highest risk to banks for theft and fraud. And so from an engineering perspective, you know, oh, well, we have, you know, secure data transfer and it's SSL and it's encrypted and blah, blah, blah. But the person sitting in front of the computer, you still don't know who they are. Maybe they stole the phone, maybe they stole the card, maybe they stole everything, they stole the identity. And it's not really the person who you think is that's buying. And so, you know, the strong customer authentication and the regulations and all these things are trying to help the system, you know, clean up the bad guys. And so, what are some mechanisms, you know, besides having a pop-up and a live stream, and it's like, you know, you can't hide behind your webcam, you know, to show your face and do a quick check, in addition to an SMS or in addition to the password, to make sure you're a real live person, you know, breathing, and you actually look like your ID. Do you think online buying is going to go there, where every time I buy shoes from Amazon, I'm going to have to, you know, make sure I didn't just wake up?
Actually, Amazon is the best example, because they have a payment solution where you don't even need your security code all the time. So they already have released some sort of security to buy, to help the customers to buy quicker. So it means that, of course, it means they take some risk, because this CVV or secure code is a kind of protection that this PAN number, this credit card number is valid. But they take the risk that they don't take this number because they want to lower the risk. So
yeah, but they're just the platform, and the risk goes to the merchant, because the merchant has to refund this stuff. So it's like,
But I believe it. We can actually quite easily replicate it, you know, to the banking world. If you imagine, you know, that there are solutions today available to assess the risks from multiple angles in the contextual way, as I described previously. We can imagine, you know, logging into the web banking application without providing any password. Right? I can imagine freely, okay? Because I can understand that my computer has been checked for, you know, financial malware, that there is no remote session, you know, nobody connected to my computer remotely. I typed in, you know, username and password to my computer when I was logging in a manner that, you know, that matched my my profile, and so on and so on. So actually, I think, and I think Zoltan had a good point here. It's the current trend is on the risk-based authentication or the adaptive authentication, which should match, you know, the measures against the very specific situation that we are in, or our customers are in. That's the point.
yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So if you're in a high fraud, you know, based on your algorithms and, you know, what the acquirer and the, you know, the systems in place should be working properly, they should be able to assess the risk and provide, you know, the different types of multi-factor authentication, like use the right tool at the right time. You need a hammer, you get a hammer. You need a screwdriver, you get a screwdriver, you know. And so I guess it's okay that we have more than one solution at our disposal, and that's you know, because we're a free society, we get to choose, and sometimes, you know, our choices aren't the best, because the password shouldn't have been a password at that time, and it was probably a weak password. And it would have been better if I wasn't allowed to put a weak password. You know, sometimes the websites have, you know, you try like 6 times and it's always like, wrong, you forgot the special character, you forgot 2 numbers. And they're trying to help us, you know, make better choices as humans, because we like the easiest route. Like, I don't know, that's how I want easy. I don't care if it makes, you know, puts more risk on me. I just want easy at the moment, because the instant gratification of like, I want it now, right now, you know, and then I'll deal with the consequences later. But sometimes that's not good, you know, and we have to put systems in place to help people realize that, okay, maybe now you felt okay doing that now, but then when the pain actually came, that's when you start screaming and yelling and, you know, we want more laws and more controls and all this stuff because I got bit. So, you know, to prevent fraud and do preventative measures instead of reactive, you know, to try to, you know, save the data once it's already been breached and you know, your credit card's already been stolen. I think there's a two-sided war there. You know, preventing the problems in the security with payments and preventing my money from being stolen, but also, you know, going into the government regulations and trying to, you know, please the whole society and put, you know, some constraints with you know, the banking regulations and all that. How do you combat, you know, because the bank, like you said, the banks are trying to build all these innovative pilot projects, and you know, like we're launching innovation, like Revolut said earlier, you got to innovate before you regulate and all this stuff. When, you know, from your own experiences, when does regulation slow you down? Because you kind of have to wait, you know, like here in Romania, we're waiting, a lot of waiting, and we're hoping that things work in our favor. But it's a risk also as a startup, like, why, you know, should I continue and should I go down that road? What if I get, you know, my head chopped off? Like, so how do you make that decision, you know, from a business perspective, innovating to, you know, and waiting for a regulation to come?
So, so we are talking about the future security solutions like behavioral analysis and knowing the previous pattern of the user and then acting whether that particular user needs to be authenticated in a strong way for this particular transaction or not. These are the technologies we're talking about, as you're very right, that the regulation should also follow this pattern, and then they will eventually. But today, regulation, as always, is playing safe, and then they are kind of trying to be foolproof. So yes, you might know that your system is quite secure, you know that there isn't any malware there, you take precautions to do that, but there are also users who are not aware of such technologies, or they're just basic users, which their systems could be infected, and then they face many threats on their systems. So this is why the regulation tries to play on the safe side. So previously sent SMS, now it is turning into other ways of authenticating the users. And so at the end of the day, as the technology providers, our task is to take it to the next level, introduce new technologies which at the same time removes the friction from the users and then improves the security for the user, but the regulation should follow. And then this is, maybe the regulation will follow it in 1 or 2 years behind the technology, but it will become there.
One more important thing is that what I see, that the legislation is everywhere slow, okay? But my experience that here in Romania it's super slow. Maybe I'm not the most, let's say, favorite person now in the country, but what the banks can do is they try to adopt something which is proven on other markets. And a good example here, for instance, Libra Bank, who started here an onboarding process which was not regulatorily decided. I talked to here in Romania the finance authority leader, and he told me that this is still within the gray zone. So it's not regulated but accepted, the way how Libra is bringing new customers digitally into their customer base. And now, since this was accepted, other banks now starts to think on how to build their own digital customer base, how to bring new customers into their onboard, into their banking environment. And this is accelerating the regulators. Simply imagine that I hate these 3 letters PSD2 plus the number, because everyone starts to freeze if they hear it, especially in the banking era. But we need to be very thankful for PSD2 because when Uber came here, there was no legislation warning before, so no taxi driver were called that, hey, watch out, there is someone coming and will hit your market. So what EBH made is basically have the banks to prepare for something new and at the same time mobilize the market. And this is what we need to understand, that this is very important.
Yeah, I would support PSD2 very, very much. I believe this is, well, it's not perfect, as you know, no regulation is, but I think it's a step in the very good direction. To come back to the previous point on the malware detection and other factors, you know, and other pieces of information gathered, for me, I'm sorry, it's obvious that all of that, you know, information gathering needs to be transparent to the end user. Otherwise, you know, if they see any friction in the process, they will not use any of the security solutions available. So it needs to be transparent, and that's what we do at least. Second of all, in regards to PSD2 and regulations, strong customer authentication, I believe this is a step in the very good direction. So it mandates the malware detection capabilities from the banks. It is clear actually on what strong customer authentication factors may be, right? Larissa this morning talked about the specific pieces of technology that can be used, and keystroke anomaly detection is one of them. So that's probably the reason why, you know, banks are trying to adopt it quickly. And the other pieces of security included in PSD2, including, you know, transaction monitoring or API channel security, I think it's a step in the good direction. So I'm very positive.
And one more thing is that I think that the bank not always has to listen to the regulators, because maybe it's not enough. If they say that SMS one-time password is safe, Michal already told us that it's not. So sometimes we need to go beyond. Very simple. If there is a rule on the roads that in the back seat you don't need seat belts, many times the taxi driver is telling me you don't need that, sir. I don't want to die, so I use it. And I have kids, and when they are traveling behind, and we are in a city, it's not mandatory to use seat belts, but I use. And this is very important to understand that the rules sometimes are too generic or not be precise enough to be able to translate it into the required level of security. That's why we security vendors are very happy to meet different kind of security officers, because most of them, they agree with us, and then they want to go beyond the legislation.
In Bucharest, there's people at the stoplight that sell you those things where you can plug them into your seatbelt so the car starts dinging. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know, but that's the world we live in, and that's a little scary. I think we're getting, yeah, we're good on time.
Good on time. Final
Yes.
question for the public, if you want.
Okay, yeah, I was going to open it up to discussion.
We do have some questions in the room. The mic is coming.
Thanks for an interesting panel, I guess. My question was about, for example, we have a great example in Nordics for the mobile bank ID, their own strong customer authentication that was developed prior to PSD2. What is your opinion on the SCA being inclusive but not intrusive?
Who wants to start? Go ahead, Michal.
So, inclusive versus intrusive, can you just
Not
explain?
versus, but not. So you need to, it need to be generally applied and available for you, but it shouldn't like collect.
Shouldn't be forced upon.
Yeah, or collect a lot of information about your good enough or how.
Like, so you're talking about the social scoring. Like going towards social scoring, because now if I know everything about you, you know, on that note, then maybe you shouldn't buy that, because, you know, we know better. And based on your buying patterns, you shouldn't go out and buy, you know, something that you can't afford or something that you don't deserve, you know, because we set some regulations upon society and how everybody should act. Yeah, that, I mean, I don't know if that goes.
So I'm not sure if I understand, you know, the question correctly, but as said, you know, I'm a big fan of risk-based authentication. So depending on the risk and, you know, what you're trying to do, the specific measures should be taken. That's my opinion. So take it for example, you know, I'm normally, you know, I travel across the sea region and I do the mobile banking from my own device every single day, right? And then, you know, there's a time for vacation for me, and I go to Singapore, and I've left my mobile device in the room in the hotel. So I go down to the lobby and I try to log into my mobile banking or web banking application from the computer in the lobby. Okay? So should the bank forbid the access for me? I don't believe so. Maybe the step-up authentication should be sent, right? Just to check whether me is me, right? And not to block the access to the application. So again, we are different, and I think Zoltan had a very good point on that. We are all very different. And those security measures should be able to adapt very quickly, depending on the situation. That's my point. Whether they should be forced, absolutely yes. I don't think that one single factor of authentication is good enough today, but they can be transparent. Okay, that's the point.
Yeah, and one more thing in regards with what I fully agree that any information we collect in regards with the customer, personalized information, very important. I wouldn't use it for anything else. And simple example, it was already mentioned that we can use the iris or the eye for authentication. I'm pretty sure no one would like to see a mail from the bank, sorry, we cannot give you loan because of your disease. Which can be, because iris can predict some sort of diseases already. Definitely this is not, and very important thing that when we talk about banks, bank is one of the biggest trust company or trust service that the customer has. So they are providing personal information, salary, date of birth, social security number, and so forth to their bankers, which they definitely don't do at the groceries. Okay, but for instance, someone on the Facebook collecting DNA tests information, so it's most probably you have seen it, that you send some sort of piece of you on a piece of stick to this company, and then they will decide how half Japanese you are. Okay, obviously collection of these information by these companies may raise questions, at least for me. If a bank would do the same, I would trust the bank to provide this information, of course, because I'm curious if I'm really Romanian or not. But for these kind of companies, I fully agree with this SCA rule that all the authentication information you should use only for authentication, because that's the main purpose.
There's been some Hollywood movies that don't end well in a lot of those scenarios.
But with your banking behavior, they will know if you're Romanian or not.
Thank you.
Good.
If I may have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're also exploring a lot in these SCA solutions, and our question to you panelists would be, where do you see in other industries or in other applications this concept of strong customer authentication that was presented by RTS as a general purpose solution?
So you wouldn't believe, but we are talking to customers from not only from banking industry, obviously. One other key area is so in general, everywhere that you can imagine some kind of fraud, and fraud in digital channels is any unpredicted approach towards your online account. Meaning that if anyone tries to log in with your stolen credentials, for example, it's a fraud to me already. Okay, nothing bad needs to happen with money yet. Okay, the fact that someone is trying to use my credentials is dangerous enough. So we are basically discussing strong customer authentication with e-commerce, obviously, with airlines. You cannot imagine how much fraud there is in loyalty programs, okay? Insurance, okay? There are some insurance, probably not that much in this region, in Central and Eastern Europe, but there are some insurance companies, that allow to transfer money in and out from the accounts, or to access sensitive information, personal information, in absolutely claims process. So anywhere like that is a strong use case for strong customer authentication.
I really like the question because this is a very good example where the very well regulated technology or service could be used. But I wouldn't answer because what I would really be focusing on where I would like to see. And for instance, the adult contents services I would like to see. As a father of 3 kids, I would like to see websites which are collecting some sort of information from their customers, whether they are allowed to see that content, order that product. And I'm pretty sure no one knows what happens in this room when there is a question as are you above 18, and whoever clicked on no, please raise your hand. It takes you maybe a Walt Disney side. But this is very simple question, which typically can be fooled easily, and honestly speaking, I'm pretty sure that even my kids did that. Okay, so where I would like to see, for instance, an age verification is, for instance, the adult contents.
Yeah, I saw a pilot, I think, on LinkedIn where they're doing that for alcohol sales. They have an age verification face scan, and if you don't pass on the face scan, maybe you look young, but you ain't gonna buy the alcohol, so...
Or you can immediately pay by your application, right?
Yeah, or you could just pay by face, but that's another story. But the biometrics, I think, is gonna be injected into society more than we know. I think you're gonna go to the airport and you're gonna have a robot there that's looking at you, allowing you to go in. There's, Amadeus Travel is already testing this stuff. There's ordering kiosks with pay-by-face, there's surveillance systems with government agencies, like face recognition is one of the strongest, I think, biometrics because it's so easily deployed on current technology. You don't have to install thumbprints everywhere. Building access is another thing, so to get access at a server room, you don't no longer need just your little plastic card that you could have picked up at the bar. You got to scan the card and take a selfie for the card to activate and the door to open. So that's kind of like two-factor authentication using biometrics at point of entry. So there's I think there's a lot of real-world use cases. Picking up your government allowance. I don't know, there's countries where in Africa, everybody gets a subsidiary from the government, and they just need to have this card that doesn't even have a photo on it. I think something like that. So, your family, and I know there's people here. I think like grandma's dead, but we're still collecting money from the government under her name. Nobody knows who that person is. So having that sort of strong customer authentication using some more than one factor is definitely a good way to clean up the mess.
So if you ask us, the security providers, where you want to see the strong customer authentication, everywhere, of course. But we still need to put the end user to the center of the equation. So asking for the user to have strong customer authentication just for example, checking what is available on Amazon before you actually make a purchase is not the best way to do it. So you add additional friction to the experience. So where should the strong customer authentication takes place? It should take place whenever that monetary transaction is happening. So I could be able to go in without asking to provide my credentials to the e-commerce site, check whatever there is available for me, and then at the time of the transaction, maybe not the e-commerce company, but maybe my bank should ask for my credentials for the 3D security, which is actually happening actually. So I don't need to provide my additional credentials just anywhere, which actually contradicts with with our offering as a security provider, but still, if you are providing a solution which contradicts again with the user experience, it won't live.
There's just one more comment I want to make on that. So right now, to share your wallet with your loved ones, you kind of have to give them your card and your PIN to your wife and your kids, and that's contractually illegal. You're not supposed to do that. You signed a contract with the bank not to do that. And there's no good way, Revolut and all these, send money from someone to someone else to try to get them to pay is one way, but there is no system that lets you use, not yet, but to use your money with someone else's identity without having to share any sort of credential or authentication, because you're giving them your authentication for a certain period of time on a certain day at a certain geolocation. So sharing, we've all talked about keeping your identity safe and doing that, but I think the next step is going to be, how do I share my identity and my wallet and my money with my family in a secure environment? So right now we're talking individually, but I think the next level is going to be, how do I create, my family shared network, or under a corporate account, how do I allow all my employees to spend money for the corporate account? Like, how are we going to do that? So these are certain things that we're working on some of this stuff at Pay by Face, and it's not just on an individual basis, but it's also giving other people rights to your data and your money and your whatever, your identity, your digital identity on your behalf to truly impersonate in a secure manner. So those are some of the areas, because then you're giving that two-factor authentication to someone else to use how they see fit, which I think is going to be something we're going to have to deal with. I think we're almost out of time. If nobody has any other questions or feedback.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Applause to our panel, please.
Yes.